18 days separated a public address in Geneva from a social media post. This precise timeline now frames a public discussion about consistency and principle. We examine what that interval reveals. One side featured Meghan at the World Health Organization in Geneva alongside the Director General. She cautioned global health officials about children becoming content, exploited by algorithms optimizing for attention and engagement. The setting, message, audience, and cause were all deemed appropriate. On the other side, 18 days later, Meghan's Instagram featured 2 new photographs for her youngest daughter's 5th birthday, shared with 5 million followers on the very platform she had described as dangerous. Comments on the post were disabled. A pre-prepared statement had already appeared in Newsweek the day before the photographs went live. This sequence prompted widespread criticism, with some commentators calling it shameless grifters and a new low. Harry and Meghan have faced accusations of wild hypocrisy for delivering speeches on the dangers of the internet and social media, particularly for children, while posting images of Archie and Lilibet across social media platforms. This analysis will detail the 18-day period, examining the Geneva speech's specific content, the pre-emptive defense published before the photographs, and a crucial factual detail that undermines that defense when comparing 2 newspaper descriptions of the same image. We will also consider an unmanaged contrast that emerged on the same Thursday afternoon. We begin with her statements in Geneva, as the exact wording holds particular significance. This event coincided with World Health Assembly Week, where health ministers from WHO member nations gathered to address critical global health issues. Meghan's appearance occurred before a memorial installation of 50 illuminated light boxes, each symbolizing a child affected by online harm. This was not a casual photo opportunity or a celebrity endorsement for a general cause. It represented a significant public health platform, attended by serious figures operating under a substantive mandate. She served as its public face, positioned alongside the Director General for Media. Commentators characterized this situation as totally bonkers, asserting that Meghan Markle chose her daughter's 5th birthday to criticize social media while simultaneously portraying herself as a protector of children. They conveyed a message of scrutiny, stating, "We see you, Meghan, and your angry statement ain't going to shut us up." Her address highlighted relentless algorithms and exploitative engagement. She warned that children encounter content they did not seek or consent to, shaped by systems they cannot comprehend or fully disengage from. She emphasized that children require safety by design, not by chance. This places responsibility on platforms and their creators, not solely on parents navigating systems engineered for maximum engagement. This perspective represents a documented critique of the social media ecosystem, supported by extensive research from both academic and celebrity advocates. Children, she noted, are no longer just digital participants. They often become the product. Critically, some questioned how, given this rhetoric, she could share her 5-year-old daughter's image for commercial gain, referencing Prince Harry's past condemnation of platforms as evil and his criticism of parents engaging in similar practices. She delivered these remarks alongside the WHO Director General, addressing an audience with the authority and mandate to act. The words themselves were precise. The cause is genuine. The described danger is documented and well evidenced. The striking aspect of subsequent events is not that her Geneva statements were incorrect. They were not. Rather, the impact of being correct about a danger diminishes if the messenger fails to reflect that principle in their own conduct. When this divergence occurs, the message becomes devalued. Parents seeking the warning may begin to scrutinize the messenger instead of the warning itself. Past statements indicated she would not present her children, specifically Archie, to the media on a silver platter. However, current actions are viewed as presenting her children on a silver platter to the very social media companies she campaigns against, possibly for engagement or perceived financial incentives as an Instagram influencer. This contradiction entangles the core cause. The primary casualty of this 18-day gap is not Meghan, but the cause she championed in Geneva. Any parent seeking that warning, unburdened by subsequent managed contradictions, now finds it more difficult to receive. The message itself was sound. The messenger's actions, however, impeded its reception. This is why the 18 days are significant, not because perfect adherence was expected, but because the interval between the speech and the photograph is precise, documented, quantifiable, and exactly 18 days. If this analysis provides context often overlooked, consider liking this video. Your engagement supports our work. We now turn to the events following the birthday photo's release, as the reaction transformed a routine post into a significant story. One concern raised is that Lilibet appears to be increasingly central to this commercial operation, effectively serving as the cheese, the bait, or the primary draw for these photographs. The response was not one of withdrawal or quiet evasion of criticism. Instead, her team proactively engaged. The day prior to the photograph's release, a spokesperson for the Duchess provided a prepared statement to Newsweek. This statement established a clear boundary, asserting a distinction between sharing personal moments and exposing children to public scrutiny. The argument posited that by obscuring faces, she upheld her Geneva principles, ensuring the children's protection and the principle's integrity. This strategic positioning warrants close examination before critique, as it represents a sophisticated maneuver beyond mere cynicism. The assertion is not a shift in post-Geneva perspective, nor a lack of foresight regarding her speech's implications. Rather, it frames the photograph and the Geneva speech as a unified act. This means not a retreat from the WHO platform, but an integration of the birthday post into the speech's principles, positing a single, consistent stance on child protection. It suggests controlled disclosure versus complete anonymity, unintentional framing over algorithmic exposure, with the parent dictating the image, not the platform. Royal observers found this approach particularly intriguing. Prince Harry's stance is also relevant to this dimension of the narrative. On the Hassan Minhaj podcast in 2025, Harry explicitly characterized major social media platforms as evil and wicked. His wife then shared their daughter's image on one such platform 18 days after delivering a speech condemning the impact of these platforms on children. The household's publicly stated position on social media and its practical use of social media for commercial and brand objectives thus present a distinct but parallel tension to the Geneva speech. This involves two individuals whose public declarations describe social media as hazardous, yet who post to it at a frequency driven by brand strategy rather than personal need. The statement was conceived, sanctioned, and delivered to a journalist ahead of the photograph's publication. This indicates a pre-emptive defense rather than a post-facto response to criticism. She anticipated the interpretation and had the explanation prepared, yet proceeded with the publication while the defense was already public. This suggests a deliberate decision to engage with a known contradiction rather than an unintentional misstep. Tom Sykes, present in Switzerland for the Geneva speech, described the birthday photograph as staggeringly tone-deaf. Richard Fitzwilliams on GB News characterized the Sussexes as tireless in self-promotion and termed the practice of photographing children from behind as very curious. This descriptor, curious, carries significant weight, as true digital invisibility for children could be achieved by simply refraining from posting their images. Instead, they are posted deliberately and on schedule to an audience of 5 million. This represents strategic art direction, not absence. Brand commentator Nick Eade informed Newsweek that the entire sequence felt hypocritical, emphasizing the timing. Claire Cohen, writing in The Independent, argued in a broadsheet column that repeated child posting, even with faces obscured, compromises rather than protects privacy. This piece appeared in a national newspaper, not a gossip platform, on the same day. The independent convergence of a royal commentator, a brand expert, and a broadsheet columnist across 3 distinct platforms, all reaching the same conclusion about the 18-day period on the same day, is not coincidental. It functions as a collective description from very professional perspectives and separate deadlines. Consider subscribing to Palace Insider and share your perspective in the comments. Does the face obscuring policy offer genuine protection? Or does it merely facilitate the post while providing a rationale? We now examine the specific detail underpinning the official defense, as this is where the argument's vulnerability becomes precise, not general. The spokesperson's entire argument hinges on the term obscured, implying protection through selective framing. Numerous outlets, including Newsweek and the New Zealand Herald, reported the birthday image as consistent with the couple's established policy of not clearly showing their children, suggesting meticulous adherence. However, the Daily Mail, examining the identical photograph, characterized it as the clearest birthday picture Meghan had ever posted of her daughter. These two descriptions cannot both be simultaneously accurate, and the defense cannot withstand their joint validity. The defense fundamentally relies on the face being genuinely, meaningfully, and substantively obscured, rendering the image distinct from an identifying photograph. Yet one national newspaper, specifically assessing this quality, reported the contrary: one image, two fundamentally opposing descriptions from sources observing the same content. The spokesperson's strategy likely depends on these two accounts not being juxtaposed. If they are, the defense's core premise fails. Either the image is privacy-preserving as described in the statement and the Daily Mail's assessment is inaccurate, or the Daily Mail accurately interpreted the photograph as Meghan's boldest image of her daughter to date, 18 days after a speech about the dangers of exposure. Both outcomes cannot coexist. Notably, the statement placed in Newsweek prior to the photograph's release did not account for the possibility of the second conclusion. A counter-argument exists, which merits full consideration, as the defense is not without merit. Supporters assert that a single, controlled, annual photograph fundamentally differs from the continuous, algorithmic feed she described in Geneva. A curated birthday picture shared by a mother on her personal platform is distinct from a child left to a recommendation engine for extended periods. Under this interpretation, she adheres precisely to the boundary articulated in Switzerland, sharing moments while protecting identity, choosing deliberate posts over algorithmic exposure, and presenting a curated glimpse instead of an endless feed. A child welfare expert consulted by Newsweek for this story conceded that an obscured face offers genuine safety advantages over a fully visible one, with practical, not merely cosmetic, distinctions. A partially obscured image reduces effectiveness in facial recognition systems and provides less data for the online targeting behaviors justifiably feared by parents of public figures. Therefore, the defender's argument, and that of the child welfare expert quoted by Newsweek, is not erroneous. However, the Geneva speech extended beyond merely screen time or facial recognition risks. Its broader focus concerned children becoming content and the cumulative systemic exposure arising when a child enters a daily feed consumed by millions an audience not chosen by the child, yet now a part of their digital life. A photograph shared with 5 million followers on a verified Instagram account by a public figure 18 days after cautioning against precisely this type of digital presence for children still constitutes such a presence. While perhaps tidier, more carefully staged, and better framed, it remains a contribution to the exact feed she characterized as hazardous. The defenders may possess honorable intentions. The critics, however, possess the calendar, which points to 18 days. An observable pattern also merits candid examination. Reviewing posts across various milestones reveals that the stated privacy standard has not intensified as one might expect from parents growing more protective. Archie's 7th birthday, a month before the Lilibet photographs, featured its own publicly shared tribute, without apparent restraint that a stricter privacy policy might impose. The stated principles and the actual posting history have diverged over time, consistently trending towards greater, not lesser, visibility across years and multiple children's milestones. This was not externally imposed. She selected the platform, the timing, and the specific content for each frame. The cumulative record, viewed across time rather than through a single birthday post, indicates increasing visibility. Tom Sykes highlighted a particularly impactful aspect, which reframes the entire discussion. He contended that her Instagram functions as a public-facing storefront. The evening before the Geneva speech, she posted an image of herself preparing, captioned, "Mama's Little Helper." The reflection in the mirror clearly displayed the label of the designer suit designated for the WHO summit the following morning. A speech on shielding children from algorithmic exposure was thus preceded by an Instagram wardrobe reveal. The Child Safety Summit and the designer label occupy the same news cycle, separated by a single night. Critics find this sequence compelling, and their observation holds weight. The outfit received its preview, the speech gained its platform, and the birthday post reached 5 million followers. The business context serves as a backdrop, not as definitive proof of motive. The Spotify deal concluded some time ago. The Netflix arrangement has been scaled down from its initial scope. The lifestyle brand continues to seek its commercial equilibrium. While these points are acknowledged by critics as not proving specific intent, they form the lens through which every family post is now viewed, and through which 5 million followers receive these posts, whether consciously or not. In situations where a brand relies on intimacy and access, and significant commercial partnerships that once generated revenue have substantially diminished, the family unit often becomes the remaining core asset, insulated from commercial restructuring. The family connection represents an integral part of the brand that cannot be divested. We now address events that unfolded on the same Thursday afternoon, a contrast that emerged organically and carried significant impact, surpassing any individual commentary. As the birthday photographs appeared on Meghan's Instagram and discussions about Geneva and the 18-day period intensified, Catherine, Princess of Wales, visited a cancer centre in Manchester. She stood with a 30-year-old patient completing chemotherapy, observing as the woman rang the bell signifying the end of treatment, a ritual familiar to cancer centres and patients. She spoke thoughtfully about the profound difficulty of the experience, not only for the patient, but for family members witnessing months of struggle with no defined role. There was no pre-planned caption strategy, no preceding announcement, no prepared statement in Newsweek, and no managed or disabled comment section. This involved one royal figure dedicating an afternoon to personally support a stranger during a profound struggle, unmediated by a personal device. Observers of this narrative consistently identify this distinction without requiring explicit commentary or pre-written statements. To summarize as plainly as possible, 18 days after publicly cautioning that children become content on platforms she utilizes daily, Meghan posted what half the press described as her daughter's keelest birthday picture yet. Her team had drafted and placed a defense with a journalist prior to the photograph's publication. She chose not to acknowledge the perceived contradiction. She proceeded with publication, having weighed potential criticism in advance and electing to absorb it, with her defense already public. A royal commentator, a brand expert, and a national broadsheet columnist all independently labeled this as hypocrisy. Her own words in Geneva identified exposure as the danger. Tom Sykes characterized the photograph as staggeringly tone-deaf. The Daily Mail reported it as the clearest image she had posted, while her spokesperson maintained it was the most careful. Both descriptions cannot be accurate simultaneously. One account describes the photograph as it appeared when examined for specific qualities. The other described what the defense required it to be, a distinct exercise. This was not an accidental inconsistency. She addressed an international forum, speaking to officials with the authority to act. The challenge arose before publication, not from subsequent critics, but from her own speech, already public, against which all future posts would be measured. She had her response prepared, approved, and disseminated to a journalist before the photographs appeared. Nevertheless, she proceeded with publication, fully aware, with her defense publicly established and the 18-day timeline visible for all to observe. This renders it one of her most calculated public moments this year. It represents a decision made with extensive preparation, a pre-positioned public defense, and a transparently weighed contradiction, presented to 5 million followers as a natural maternal act. The core situation is straightforward. She traveled to Geneva, warned the world that children are being turned into content by attention-maximizing platforms, returned home, and within 18 days rendered her own child content on one of those platforms. There was no apology, only a statement insisting both actions represented the same gesture of love. The 18 days provide a direct response to that statement. They signify the interval between the warning and the action. This gap allowed for a visible divergence between principle and practice, sufficient for a royal commentator, a brand expert, and a broadsheet columnist to converge independently on the same assessment. Finally, a counterpoint merits consideration. Those who strongly object to this type of analysis argue that scrutinizing a celebrity activist's adherence to their public statements is unjust. They contend that perfect alignment with advocated principles is unattainable for anyone, and that such stringent demands stifle advocacy by making it too burdensome. This is a valid argument with broad applicability in public life. However, the specificity of this situation lies in the 18-day timeframe. It is not about years of general social media use or broader patterns of public advocacy. The 18-day specifically, the proximity between the speech and the photographs, renders the time gap itself the central point. Had the birthday occurred 6 months before or after Geneva, the discussion would be substantially different, as the photographs would not be framed by the speech. It is precisely the 18 days, the measurable interval between the warning and the action, that elevates this beyond a general observation about public figures living imperfectly by their stated principles, a common occurrence. These 18 days make this particular instance visible, documented, and sufficiently precise for detailed examination. In Geneva, she articulated a specific concern about a specific danger to those best positioned for systemic intervention. 18 days later, she performed an action directly engaging that specific danger on the specific platform she had just characterized as hazardous. The calendar, in this context, is not an unfair metric. It is simply a record of sequential events. This record requires no interpretation, only a chronological reading and a simultaneous consideration of both actions. What is your assessment? Does the face-obscuring policy genuinely distinguish the birthday post from her Geneva pronouncements? Or does the 18-day period convey a different narrative, irrespective of its framing? Share your candid perspective in the comments below. Subscribe to Palace Insider for our subsequent analyses. Liking this video significantly supports our continued work.